Hi everyone, it's Al. I want to do a quick video on something that I've had on my mind for a while, and we're going to talk about load development and using common sense in reloading. The reason I'm doing this video is I get on shooting boards and reloading boards, and I see a lot of people asking very common and questions common to people new to the sport and new to reloading, and I also see questions about people who want to try out a new load and wondering if it's going to be okay. And then you get all these people that are answering on these boards, and I don't know where these people are coming from, but they're really turning off the new people that are coming onto the sport, or the new folks, right? And I tell them, well, if it's not in a recipe book, you shouldn't do it because it's dangerous and you could blow yourself up and blah blah blah. And some of that is true, but we have gotten used to in this country to stop using our brains, and if it's not in a cookbook like that, then you can't do it. And that's not the way it is. That's not what reloading is about. Reloading is about experimentation. Yes, you need to be safe with it, but that means that you need to take responsibility of knowing what you're doing, get comfortable with the reloading process, understand how pressure affects your loads and how much powder and space, capacity in the case, meaning, whether you have the bullet seated at a certain depth or not, and how much volume is there, after you put your powder charge and so on, how much all of that's going to affect pressure. So reloading is something that you really need to look at it from an experimenter's standpoint. And if you want to be a cookbook type approach guy, knock yourself out, but don't tell other people not to do it, because that's not what reloading is about. These, the majority of the loads that are contained in this book are loads that were created, the recipes that come down, from 100 years, from people like you and I that developed those loads through trial and error and looking for signs of oppression in the cases, flattened primers, punctured primers, right? Bright rings around the base, anything like that. So it is with a sad heart that I see how far we've descended into this new era of, ultra safe. We can't ride our bikes without our helmets, and we got to have elbow pads and knee pads because we can't afford to get hurt kind of mentality. That's just stupidity to me. I grew up when, amusement parks or just parks in general, you could take your kid to the park. When I was a little kid, our slides were made out of steel. There was none of this plastic, the handrails were all, tubular steel. There was none of this soft landing. It was gravel on the bottom, and you got hurt once in a while when you weren't paying attention, but it forced you to pay attention, and it forced you to be careful. With all these new mentality of following strict rules and being ultra safe about everything that you do, people never learn. They never learn to watch out for mistakes because they never had a chance to be exposed to what is dangerous and what could hurt them. And I'm not saying obviously that you shouldn't do you should do reloading so you could get hurt or get to the point where you have an overpressure and learn from it. But read about it, learn yourself from it, and then use common sense to develop your loads. And don't tell other people, for crying out loud, not to try a new recipe just because it isn't in the book. The book is just a guide, and it's a guide for you to experiment. And if you want to follow a load there, then great, knock yourself out and follow a load. But if you want to try a new load, by all means, you have the knowledge, God gave you the brains and the wisdom to do it, pray about it, and knock yourself out and try a new load. I'm going to give you a perfect example. The other day I went to a store to buy some bullets for my 357 Magnum, and let me put it on this mode here so we can see it. And all I could find was 125 grain flat point copper plated bullets from Rainier Ballistics, right? Normally I shoot the 158 grainers out of my 38 special 357 Magnum loads, but these were 124 or 125 grain loads. Well, For my powders, I mostly use H414 for my rifle loads, red dot for my pistol loads, and then I also have unique as well as 4895. So you know, I try to keep the variety of powders to a minimum. I use my unique for my shotgun loads, also for some hand loads, and the 4895 I do use for some of my rifle loads as well. So it depends on, you know, what I'm doing. I can choose one or another powder, but I don't want to end up with a whole shelf full of different powders. That's just not me. You know, I got almost every primer, you know, for small rifle, large rifle, small pistol, large pistol, and that's about as far as I want to go. So when I went and got these Rainier ballistic bullets, all they had was 125 grain loads. Well, when I went to look at my manual under my 38 special, lo and behold, there were no bullet combinations for the grains of bullet that I wanted to shoot or that I wanted to use, and the powders that I had. So if we kind of looking here at the 125 grain jacketed bullet, well, first of all, it's not a jacketed bullet. I have a lead bullet that's copper plated. But if we look in here, I can see that I could use unique with 5 grains of powder, and if I further go down, I can see that I have red dot, that I could use red dot with 3.7 grains of powder. Now I have both of these powders. I have unique and I have red dot, but it's not a 125 grain jacketed bullet. There is a section that covers copper plated bullets of 125 grain, which is exactly what I purchased, but it's accurate number 5 and Vita Worry's 3N37 and accurate number 2, as well as, you know, Vita Worry N350, 340, and 320. Well, I don't own Vita Worry powder, never tried it, and I don't have a dealer nearby that sells it, and I'm not going to buy it. I don't have accurate number 2. I don't have a need for accurate number 2 other than this one particular load, so I'm not going to get it either. So what I decided to do was create my own load. I also see that a regular 125 grain lead bullet that is non-copper plated nor jacketed uses also 3 powders, none of which I have. But when I look at just a regular lead bullet that is non-copper plated, the reason that they use these powders is that they want to keep the pressures. Let me see if I can get this down here. There we go. They want to keep the pressures low so you don't have any leading on the barrel. So they keep them about 900 feet per second. But if you look at the copper-plated bullets, some of them are being driven over 1,000 feet per second. Most of them are in the above 900 feet per second, right? With the average seems to be about 950 feet per second or so. So I'm fairly comfortable that if I develop a load that's 100 for my 125 grain copper plated bullet that is near 950 feet per second, I should be okay. So when I go over here and I look at the 125 grain jacketed bullet loads, and I look at unique, I see that unique requires 5 grains of powder, and if I do that, it'll drive that bullet at 959 feet per second, which is, you know, right where I need to be. I also look and see if I use red dot and I put 3.7 grains of powder, I could drive it to 914 feet per second. So I'm going to try red dot for 2 reasons, or I decided to do red dot for 2 reasons. One is because it's a lower loading powder, which saves me on powder. You know, that's a savings of almost, you know, it's 1.3 grains that I save for every case that I load. And the velocities are comfortable, 914 feet per second. Now, I also know that these particular loads are using number 100 small pistol powder, small pistol primer, excuse me, which I don't have. I have right now, the only thing that I have in stock in my house is the 200 Magnum primers, which are hotter. So that's another reason for not going with a unique load, because it's already driving the bullet, according to the recipe book, at 960 feet per second, versus the red dot load with 3.7 grains of powder that drives that load at 920 feet per second. So if I use a number 200 Magnum pistol primer, that should give me a little extra humph, and I should get somewhere near that 950 feet per second without any overpressure. So that's my approach to load development. Now, because I can put 3.7 grains of powder, right? It says also not to exceed 3.9 grains of powder. So I have a 0.2 grain variation between a starting load and a maximum load. And the only unknown variable that I have is that I'm going from regular pistol primer to Magnum primers, which will give me a hotter load, and therefore more pressure. So I want to be careful about that. So I go back to my handy dandy little Lee dipper sizing chart, and I see that if I look for my red dot powder, let me find it here. If I look at red dot powder and I look in here, I can see that a 0.5 dipper gives me 3.5 grains of red dot. That's perfect, because that takes me 0.2 grains under the starting load of 3.7 grains. So now I have a 0.4 grain variance or underload from the maximum of 3.9. So I feel very comfortable in using my Magnum primers, because I know that I am 0.2 grains lower than the starting load. So I'm going to use a 0.5 cc dipper for this load. So these are some of the steps that you need to kind of undertake when you're doing load development. I mean, it's not like we're in the dark ages of reloading and we don't have any load data to go by. We have a lot of tools at our disposal. There's probably 5 different manufacturers that make load data. Heck, you can go on site online, and you can go to Hodgdon and have any load that you want to create on, or that you're interested in, and pull it up online. So they have reloading manuals right online, or you can see all the different loads. But if you don't find something you like, you can by all means create your own. Something I should also point out, use your head when you're buying dies. So for example, I noticed that the Lee dies nowadays, used to be in the old days, when you bought a set of Lee dies for 357 Magnum, it was 357/38 special. Now they sell the exact same dies, except one is labeled 357 Magnum, the other one's labeled 38 special. If you didn't know any better, you'd buy both when you only need one. So kind of use common sense on that. And obviously, the one difference is that the load data that they provide you with for one and the other is different. So instead of using 2 manuals or 2 load pages and covering both sets of cartridges, they only include the load data for one. So they'll give you the overall length for a 357 Magnum, which is 1.59 inches, versus a 38 special, which is 1.550 inches. So this is 4/100ths of an inch longer than a 38 specialist, and also the load data is for 357 Magnum. So you learn to ignore that when you're loading 38 special, and just use the cookbook or the references that are available online to do that. So that's my approach at load development. Yours may be different, but this is what this is what works for me, and this is how I do it. And it's all about common sense, and it's all about experience. I've been loading ammo for over 25 years now, so I'm very comfortable with what I know and what I can do. These are some of the loads that I crafted using my own homegrown loads. So this is the 125 grain flat point copper plated lead bullet, and these are prime cases that I had as I developed my load, and went up to, you know, that 3.5 grain loading, developing that, and there's no sign of overpressure whatever. And these are the some of the fire cases that I used to test with, and there's no appearance of overpressure anywhere. There's no bright rings around the rim. The primers, when I extracted them, were fine. They weren't flattened. They weren't, you know, you didn't have that deep punch mark in it as you would when you have, you know, beginning to have signs of overpressure. So that's it. That's kind of what I wanted to cover today. I just wanted to have a quick video on, you know, using common sense when you're doing load development, and to remind everybody that reloading is fun, right? Reloading is not about sitting down with a cookbook and just following the same recipe over and over and over again, and then going out and spending, you know, on yielding amounts of money on buying all kinds of different stuff just because you can't find what you need in a single recipe. Experiment. Use your brains. Look at similar loads for other bullets, and understand that if you have, in my example, a copper-plated bullet, you want to keep it about 950 feet per second, and then allow for variances of every other component that you have to start developing your load to come up with a load that works for you. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching, and God bless everybody. Take care.